violated. Yeah. Worldwide.
Hey, what is going on? It is July 28th. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the MMA Podcast. Got a bunch going on this weekend. UFC 201 live from Atlanta, Georgia. Such a fun welterweight title belt we're going to have between the heaviest hitters, Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley, going at it, along with a card last weekend from Chicago. Holly Holm loses her second fight to Valentina Shevchenko. We'll talk about that whole card. News-wise, wasn't the craziest of weeks, but of course, with this UFC 201 card coming up, a couple fight announcements. We aren't too devoid. Phone lines open. Let's do it.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
That's right. It is the MMA Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Joined today, as I am on many episodes, by P Money. He's at Sweet Pappy Jones. What's up, dude?
Oh, Jake, I'm having a lovely evening. The hashtag is Wonderful Wednesday. It's a beautiful day out here in Southern California. Heat wave be damned. Excited to break down old UFC on Fox 20 with you. Talk about last weekend's action and get into all the upcoming action, bro.
For sure, for sure. And as always, you can visit the MMApodcast.com. Click the links at the top to subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or SoundCloud. Or Stitcher, I think, too. Get it pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts, all for free.
$3.99?
The low. Yeah, let's get to this UFC on Fox 20 card, which initially was supposed to be headlined between Rumble Johnson and Glover Teixeira. Oh, yeah, and really quick, if you are listening, want to call in, 213-457-3380. Our boy Diz called in last week. That was fun to talk to him. And if you are listening live, you can call in, tweet in. The Twitter is at the MMA Podcast. There are times where I'll go on crazy rants and I'll black out and my vision will get fuzzy and I won't see that anyone's calling. But the Twitter I have up pretty much 24/7, so I can get to those maybe a little bit quicker. But, yeah, Chicago, Illinois, Holly Holm versus Valentina Shevchenko. An upset in the main event, but we'll save that for last. Going over the prelims, honestly, I missed the UFC on Fight prelims. Saw Jason Knight defeated Jim Ehlers in a split decision. They had a little war of words going there. We had Michael Brazeras, Kamaru Usman, Darren Elkins, and Eddie Wineland all take wins. Pat, what did you make of the prelims before we move on to the main card?
Yeah, I thought there were some pretty decent prelims, especially the Fight Pass prelims. I mean, we had a good finish there. Alex Oliveira versus James Mousasi. That was a good battle. There was a really bad low blow in that one. Very unfortunate to have something like. I mean, this was such a savage knee, almost right to the crotch, and it was just very unfortunate that happened during such an exciting fight. But that was immediately that followed the Jason Knight versus Jim Ehlers fight. That was a fantastic scrap. Definitely a good one. These guys, a couple featherweight prospects, they came in and threw down. Jason Knight showed some good hands, some good ground game. He really utilized the mission control and had a very good guard going there. A lot of pressure, definitely. Jim Ehlers himself, he's a tough prospect. That was a great fight. Yeah, and Eddie Wineland, big shouts out to Eddie Wineland getting that third round TKO over Frankie Saenz. I mean, it was a fairly close fight. Eddie definitely had the first 2 rounds, but man, he was able to uh, drop Frankie. I want to say it was twice in the third round, and uh, that third time he just swarmed on him. It was a fantastic finish. Some pretty solid action, I'd say, on the preliminary card.
Yeah, I was able to catch those fights on Fox, and it was nice to see the MMA Podcast alum Eddie Wineland with a TKO in the third round. Rocking those, I think, blue shorts. I'm liking the new colorful shorts. It took away something when they went all black and white, but this layout is definitely a little bit more colorful. And yeah, just no more yellow mat, please. That brings us to the main card. What was that first fight? That was Herrig versus Curran. I think, did I take Herrig and you took Curran? Did we split on that?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I took Feliz on that. I think we were unanimous on taking little Bulldog.
Yeah. Little Bulldog gets the rear naked choke in the first round. Francis Ngannou, wow, looking excellent against Bohan Mihalovic. Another first round finish, a TKO there. Dude swings with power. Let's just talk about those two fights. And man, you know, we've seen Feliz take a lot of losses against a lot of the top talent at strawweight. Pulling up the rankings right now, which let's see here. The women's strawweight, Herrig wasn't ranked before then. It still isn't ranked. Yeah, man, I really don't see Herrig beating anyone in the top 10. That's a strong ass group of women if you really look at it. You have Thug Rose, Tisha Torres, Kovalkovitz, JoJo Calderwood, who's coming off a big win, Valerie Letourneau, Paige Van Zant, Michelle Watterson, Penne, Aguilar, Randa Marcos. I mean, God, that's 13 or 14 women who, as good as Herrig is, I don't think she should be favored in any of those fights, because we sort of think of it as a weak division just because it's so new and we don't really know any of these names. But really, this is not that wimpy a weight class at all.
Yeah, it certainly isn't. The women's 115-pound class is really a good one, and I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, those are all definitely tough fights for Feliz Herrig. She has a strong style. She's definitely one of the pioneers of women's combat sports. I mean, she's been around in kickboxing for a long time before she got into women's mixed martial arts, and she's definitely made strides. She's come together, or she's come a long way as a mixed martial artist. But I mean, gosh, you see in her loss to Paige Van Zant, just some of these people with the grappling games. I mean, they're just advanced to a point where it's hard to catch up. Where you come from a certain background, and I mean, I hate to say the game has passed her by, as she just finished someone by a first round submission. You know, that's clear evidence right there that her game is improving, but you know, is it enough to catch up with the top 10, the top 5, the top 3 of the division? It looks like a tough way to go for Feliz. But you know, hey, I'm definitely rooting for her. I like her. I think she's a good personality. Definitely seems like a good lady, and yeah, definitely a good fighter. And yeah, Francis Ngannou, like you're saying, just definitely swinging with that Hulk strength. He was hulking out in there,
balling so hard. I thought he played for Montreal.
Man, he was playing so hard. I thought he balled for Nova Scotia.
However that rap there goes. I want to see, is he ranked yet? He is.
Shouts out to Horse Simcoe.
He's still not ranked. But man, shoot, after this win, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight someone like a Roy Nelson, like a Ruslan Magomedov, who are 12th and 15th respectively. I don't know if Frank Mir gets dropped. That opens up room for another ranked fighter. But Francis Gano now, I believe, still an undefeated prospect. No, he lost early in his career. 8-1, hasn't lost in 7 fights, but on a tear, 3-0 since joining the UFC back last December. Is pretty active for a heavyweight. He's only been in the UFC for 7 months now, and he's got 3 fights under his belt. So yeah, I'd like to, and I mean, that was a 94-second knockout, so let's see him step in there against someone big.
Yeah, he certainly has to. I mean, his first 2 fights were second-round TKO victories, and this third fight against Mialovic, that was a first-round TKO victory. So, I mean, hey, he's just getting better. He's just running through them quicker. Definitely seems like a sign to me that he needs a step up in competition. So, yeah, definitely off to a hot 3-0 start in the heavyweight division.
Next on the list was Edson Barboza and Gilbert Melendez. And I don't know, this one went pretty much exactly the way I think I said I thought it was going to. Edson just being the quicker fighter, chopping down those legs. Gilbert, you know, it would have behooved him to really press the Brazilian, make him fight off of his back, whether that's on the mat or off the cage. But seemed to be willing to stand there and exchange, take a lot of leg kicks. Edson pretty much controlled the entire fight. Edson now, he is 3-1 in his last 4, only loss coming to Tony Ferguson, who might be next in line for a title. Gilbert Melendez, now since joining the UFC, 5 fights, 1-4. Only win against Diego Sanchez. And don't get me wrong, his 4 losses are against pretty fucking good 155ers. Benson, Pettis, the current champ, Eddie Alvarez, and Edson Barboza. So I don't say give the man his walking papers quite yet. Give him a fight that he can easily win. Give him a fight against a scrub 155er, and let's see Gilbert, or Giblert as Reebok once coined him. Let's see Gilbert step in there and get his first finish in the UFC. I would have thought for sure, you know, given 5 fights in the UFC, he would have already had a finish, but no, and just 5 fights, 4 decisions, and a submission loss to Anthony Pettis. Not how Gilbert Melendez, I think, foresaw his move to the UFC when Zuffa bought Strikeforce back in 2012.
Yeah, certainly not. And I think a lot of us didn't expect that. Gilbert Melendez, now arguably, could have been scored the fight against Benson Henderson. He very well could have been the UFC 155-pound champion. A lot of the media scored that for Gilbert Melendez. That was definitely a very close fight, but yeah, I thought he was going to be able to bring it to Edson Barboza this past Saturday, but not so much, man. Barboza, he's another one, another good prospect who still young in the game, but man, he's just got a vicious skill set. Those leg kicks are just absolutely unheard of. They're just super lethal. Probably the craziest in the game. I mean, Edson Barboza, Jose Aldo Jr., those are just a couple of the guys who have those leg kicks in particular. You do not want any part of that. And he was able to execute a perfect game plan against Gilbert Melendez. I thought Gil was maybe going to try and mix it up a little bit more, but he was just not able to do it. But it was a solid fight. It's great scrap for Barboza. He's certainly a top tier talent at 155 pounds. I think we've known that now, and that definitely helps to solidify that with this victory.
And talk about a good game plan. That was really the story of the main event. Valentina Shevchenko sort of made Holly Holm push the action, kept backing up, and kept throwing counters, almost like a Lyoto Machida. She had more oomph on her jab, more kicks landing. And as good as Holm is a striker, probably the best boxer of all time, the best female boxer of all time, is great when it comes to hand placement, footwork, mixing up kicks and punches. I don't know. She just sort of fed straight into Valentina's plan of leading her in and getting in and out, landing, and before Holly really can make it a scrap and start landing punches, Valentina Shevchenko is back out, making Holly stalk, and I think everyone knew toward the end of the fifth round that it was about to be a 49-46 one-sided affair, which no one really expected. I think we both picked Holm. Holm was a pretty big favorite, I think floating around minus 300. This is her her second loss ever in mixed martial arts. She was 10-0 after defeating Rousey, now has lost to Tate and Shevchenko. And I forget who brought it up, but it really makes you wonder now, the UFC wanted her to wait up for Ronda Rousey so they could do the rematch for the belt. It really makes you wonder how much Holm wishes she may have listened to the UFC and waited and gotten a huge payday that she would have gotten fighting Ronda Rousey again, where that fight really now doesn't make as much sense as it would have if she still retained the belt. But back to the fight, Valentina Shevchenko looked great and lined her up right along with Julianna Pena and one or two other women for being next in line for that bantamweight title that now belongs to Amanda Nunes. What did you think of this fight?
Man, I thought it was a great scrap, really. Just a super technical fight between two world-class, elite female strikers. It was a very great fight to see. We both talked about it in the podcast leading up to this fight. That Shevchenko, I mean, her credentials are pretty much just as illustrious as Holly Holm. I mean, albeit in women's kickboxing as opposed to women's boxing. Although, I mean, Holly's accomplished in kickboxing as well. But certainly I don't think anybody was selling her short, not necessarily as wide a margin as the Vegas odds. But what I thought Holly's biggest advantage would be in this fight, being a little bit taller and having a little bit more reach, ended up being a little bit of a disadvantage for her. Shevchenko, she ended up making that work to her advantage. She waited for Holly Holm to throw those strikes, and being the longer fighter, she was missing longer. Shevchenko, she was able to cover the distance super quickly. She was putting very quick, very accurate combos on her. And we were talking about leg kicks earlier. Jose Aldo, Edson Barbosa, man, Shevchenko, Jakey, tell me she wasn't digging those things in. Those were those were championship caliber leg kicks right there, digging right into that thigh. And she just had a great game plan. She was countering her basically all through the fight. There was really just in speaking of potential regrets Holly Holm might have had in the first round, she dropped Shevchenko there in the opening frame, but she didn't pounce. She stayed patient. Typically a smart move. I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, but man, you gotta think maybe you should have just came in there winging it with a nice flying head kick or something like that, and really going for the gusto. I mean, my goodness, look at how that ended up turning out, anyways. But no, a superb game plan from Valentina. Really, I think that helps to put her further towards the top of the division. Her only loss, I want to say, is to Amanda Nunes, and who is now the UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. So that doesn't look too bad on your record. Helps to sell a title fight. You're looking to avenge a loss. Yeah, no, I thought it was a fantastic fight. Shevchenko, she looked well conditioned and truly in championship condition against another fellow champion, one of also the best to do it, with one of the best coaches in her corner. It was a great performance from Valentina Shevchenko there against Holly Holm.
Yeah, and we'll see what Shevchenko gets next. I would imagine one, maximum two more fights before she gets a title fight. Probably just one, honestly. I mean, that in my eyes moves her up there. I just had the fighter rankings up. I think I closed them out just about 15 seconds ago, of course. All right, pulling them back up. Women's bantamweight. Yeah, now you have 1, 2, 3 behind Amanda Nunes, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, and Valentina Shevchenko. Pena, number 5. So I don't know if the rankings will affect her chance of getting a title shot. I'd assume not. But yeah, I don't know. Have you heard any word from Amanda Nunes as far as when she wants to take her next fight?
The last thing I was reading was just an article, I'm sure you've probably seen it, Jake, where she was saying, oh my goodness, because I want to say Shevchenko was looking for the title shot, and Amanda Nunes said, I'll fight whoever they want, but I think Julianna Pena and Valentina Shevchenko should fight in a number 1 contenders match to see who's going to fight me next. That, I'm pretty sure that was the tweet coming from Amanda Nunes.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking at comments Pena made a couple days ago on the MMA Hour, calling Holly Holm harmless Holly, saying she was overrated. Saying, quote, "It just sounds like Nunes is ducking both of us because she's just had gotten a fight with Valentina. She knows what she's working with, and she knows that I'm just getting warmed up, and a 5-round fight with me would be atrocious. She knows I'm going to stand right there in the pocket with her and throw blows. So I definitely don't think that she welcomes that, and she's kind of biding her time as much as she can." So,
oh my.
Yeah, she seems to sort of also allude to the fact that now Pena and Shevchenko are 1A and 1B as far as who might get a title shot against the new and I guess only current Brazilian champion in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're counting Jose Aldo's interim championship.
That's right. That's right.
And technicalities, but Yeah, you know what? It has to be one of them. They certainly seem like the most deserving in the UFC women's bantamweight division. I mean, at least off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody else that really is making a big case. And I don't know. I don't think it's got to be Julianna Pena in my eyes. It
Yeah.
just she's got the 4-fight winning streak. Shevchenko and Nunes just fought like a few months ago. It seems like that fight just does not make sense right now. She's only got a 1-fight winning streak, albeit against Holly Holm. Um, she needs to get at least one more. Maybe two more, but I think there should just be one more to keep her waiting for whoever the winner of Nunes and Pena is.
Yeah, I don't know. Out of those two, I don't know who I would give it to. I was about to make a really good point, and then I believe I completely spaced out. Yeah, you were talking about how Aldo was the interim champion, and I was thinking, man, only in the UFC could you have it set up to where the interim champion got knocked out by the undisputed champion in 13 seconds, just like what? 7 months prior, 8 months prior, like it wasn't that long ago. Like, yeah, wow. Conor has been a little inactive, but that fight was less than 8 months ago. So now you have an interim champ who got knocked out by the undisputed champ.
Seems like forever ago.
No, if I remember correctly, it was UFC 194, which was in December of 2015. Let me see. UFC 194, Aldo versus December 12th, 2015.
That's all accurate.
First round, 13 seconds.
Wow.
Funny enough, at the time, the roles were reversed. Aldo held the undisputed belt, and Conor held the interim belt. When people look back at the history of the featherweight championship, and they see Aldo, then McGregor interim, defeats Chad Mendes, then Conor undisputed, then Aldo interim, defeats Frankie Edgar. They're just going to scratch their head and wonder what the fuck was the UFC doing, which a lot of fans in this current day wonder. I guess let's move on. I don't have anything else about UFC on Fox 20, do you? You with us, P-Money?
Yeah, just had a big reception drop there for some reason, but
shit.
Still holding on.
Cool. Well, then let's move from UFC on Fox 20 to the news. Not a lot of news this week. We had maybe the craziest podcast of all time a couple weeks ago. 4 cards, the UFC getting sold, absolute fucking craziness. This week, I think we got Dan Henderson will retire, win or lose, after the Bisping fight, which, Pat, I don't know. I think when that was made official, I think that was the podcast I did with Alan. So I don't know if we ever got your take on Dan getting the title nod. For me, do I think he deserves it? No. But am I going to bitch about it? No. This is one of the few times I'll make an exception. One of the greatest fighters ever. Giving him one last chance at a UFC title and a winnable fight. I'll be rooting for Dan. I will not be betting on him. Look, I've led the Jacare as getting fucked over for a title shot train since he beat Okami back in 2013. Yeah, fuck, 2013. I have been all about that Jacare love and him getting a title shot, but why the fuck not, man? If anyone deserves an undeserved title shot, it's him. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of people's sentiments. It really had to be the UFC sentiment in putting this matchup together, right? I mean, I tell you what, though, Dan Henderson, if he were to beat Michael Bisping and retire with the UFC championship, I mean, you can kind of say Dan Henderson already was a UFC champion. He did win a UFC tournament back in the day. Not necessarily the same thing, but at the same time, I mean, having won belts in Strikeforce, Pride, being this close to being a two-time two-division champ, if he were to win that and become the 185-pound champion in the UFC, I mean, that would just be the most insane turn of events, and I think would just further cement his legacy as one of the absolute greatest of all-time fighters in the UFC and really, I dare say, all combat sports, just because of Dan Henderson's wrestling background and what Dan Henderson has done in mixed martial arts, fighting everybody from, knocking out Fedor, beating Nogueira. I mean, he's beat up heavyweights, knocked out the greatest heavyweight of all time. His accolades are just, they speak for themselves. As you said, Jake, that I think that's as well put as anybody could put it. If anybody deserves an undeserved title shot, it would be Dan Henderson. Henderson versus Bisping, too, is a fight that, I mean, everybody has always said, oh, if they ever do that fight again, everybody would be all about it, because that fight was just one of the most epic knockouts in history. It was just on one of the most epic cards in history. It was a fantastic fight on a fantastic card. Brings back a lot of good memories, so people want to see that fight again. Man, and Dan Henderson promising to retire at the end of it. I mean, I guess that kind of had to be the caveat, right? Like, okay, man, just give me the title shot and I'll quit. I'll quit after this one.
And it makes sense, too, because if he loses to Michael Bisping, there's really nowhere for him to go. And if he beats Bisping and takes the belt, then what's he going to do? Wait for the winner of Weidman, Rockhold, and Jacare to step in and absolutely fucking murder him? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's just the smartest move at this point. If you can get it done, excellent. You beat a guy that you've already beat before and get to retire as UFC champion and complete one of the greatest legacies that MMA history has ever known. And if not, hey, at least you got to go out with your last fight as a championship match. It's really no loss for Dan Hendo. As you mentioned, I think really the only person that this is a loss for is our boy Jacare.
Yeah, which oh man, I've tooted that horn so many fucking times, along with the fact that he really did beat Yoel Romero, and Yoel Romero was cheating during that fight. But moving on, speaking of the middleweights, looks like the only other bit of news this week was that Vitor Belfort is going to take on Gegard Mousasi at UFC 204 in London, England. What are your first reactions and feels on that? I'm leaning Belfort for no other reason than, even off the sauce, he's still a great fighter. And when I think of the last few fights Gegard has been in, I know he just fought at UFC 200 and didn't look bad, but who'd he beat? Some bum? I don't know. I think Belfort, even off the sauce, offers a lot of troubles, and I think he beats Mousasi.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think we're seeing things a little differently here, Jake. I'm thinking Gegard handles Vitor. I mean, Gegard, much like Vitor Belfort, Vitor's good everywhere it goes, but I think the Vitor of the, let's say, TRT Vitor era or the Prime Vitor era, which probably also was like TRT Vitor era, um, was much better. And Gegard Mousasi of right now fucking hands Vitor Belfort his ass. Um, and I think he'll probably do it in pretty good fashion. I think, be it standing up, Gegard is too technical to get caught up in the Vitor flurry. I believe he'd be able to avoid that and successfully counter or get the fight to the ground, where Vitor has just not been looking his all these days. And Gegard is comfortable everywhere the fight goes. And, I mean, you look at that guy when he's walking into the octagon, he's got that he's got that very comfortable look. He does not look like anybody who's even going in there to fight. He's just as calm as could be. And I think he's going to put it on Vitor Belfort fairly handily.
Fairly handily. I couldn't disagree with you more. Come UFC 204, let's see. That fight will roll around come October 8th in Manchester, England. Our boy Jay Jeans might be there live. We'll figure out some sort of friendly wager on the podcast. Maybe if you're listening and you can think of a good bet, tweet us at the MMA Podcast. It could be an embarrassing thing the losers got to do, something the winner or the losers got to do for the winner, something good, something entertaining. I'd love to win an easy bet against you, picking Gegard Mousasi against Vitor Belfort. How dare you?
Oh my God, Jake, are you kidding me?
How dare you?
Oh,
but shit. You have anything else before we get to UFC 201? I mean, I really dug deep. There was just not a lot. I guess Mark Hunt is Mark Hunt is really pissed off about the whole Brock thing. Once half of Brock's check or the entire Brock check, he went on the MMA Hour, just absolutely smoking the UFC, all the fighters in the UFC, saying, just throwing some real serious barbs out. Apparently, Jeff Nowitzki contacted Mark after his appearance on Ariel's show, but obviously the damage had been done. I don't think he's going to take any punishment for it, but he was obviously very angry. A lot of people calling for him. I think Jose Aldo calling for Vitor Belfort to head up a fighters union. Did you hear about all of that Mark Hunt nonsense?
Oh yeah. I had heard about Mark Hunt, and I mean, I can certainly understand his grievance. I think really all of us can. I mean, it's just aggravating. They're testing Brock Lesnar. They're testing him before the fight, this, that, and the other. But yeah, you're testing him, but he gets caught for estrogen blockers or whatever it is. But the test results take so long to get analyzed or blah, 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 whatever the case may be, that the fight has already happened by the time it's disclosed that he's been dirty. So it just doesn't make any kind of sense. How can you have your system run that way? It almost doesn't do any good because, now you can fine Brock Lesnar or suspend Brock Lesnar or whatever the case may be, but the damage has already been done. Mark Hunt was pummeled pretty thoroughly in that 3-round affair against Brock Lesnar. A guy who Mark Hunt was screaming and telling all of the MMA media, this guy is juiced to the gills. And guess what?
comes back that multiple tests he took, he failed, and he apparently was juiced to the gills or has all the signs and banned substances that someone who is juiced to the gills has in their system. So, of course, Mark Hunt has every right in the world to be 100% pissed off at their situation. I know that in certain professions, there's a little thing that we call hazard pay. If you're on a particularly dangerous job, you may be getting, who knows, similar to a time and a half or maybe even a doubling of your typical contract or a typical hourly rate. So, yeah, why wouldn't Mark Hunt be able to get some sort of pay like that? And I mean, you would think there would be some sort of clauses in these fighters' contracts built in these days, especially with the nature of USADA testing, to where they could dock them for pay-per-view points or something to that effect. Okay, your salary is what your salary is, but your pay-per-view points and things like that, we're because I'm sure they're going to take much longer to dole out that money as opposed to their show and win money and fight night bonus money. They're going to wait for those pay-per-view numbers to be finalized before they start cutting some checks. So, why not build that into, hey, if you pop hot, we're taking 50% or 75% of your pay-per-view points, depending on how many times you failed or something like that. But yeah, no, I'm sorry. I definitely sympathize with Mark Hunt. There seems to be a lot of different ways that this could be handled, and I say could be because it's still kind of unfolding. So hopefully the UFC is able to do something and compensate the old boy Mark Hunt for this one.
And that's really all I got for the week in MMA news. So let's get to UFC 201. Robbie Lawler versus Tyron Woodley, the main event there. Prelims on Fight Pass. Let's just skip them. Michael Graves versus Bohan Velichkovic. Ryan Benoit versus Freddie Serrano. And Cesar Arzamendia versus Damian Brown. We got 9 fights after that. Let's just focus on those 9. 4 of them being on the Fox Sports 2 prelims. You gotta feel bad for Wilson Hayes, who was originally supposed to fight Mighty Mouse for the title on the co-main event. It was supposed to be Wilson versus Demetrius Johnson. Johnson pulls out for an injury I still think is unconfirmed. Then was going to fight Sean Santella. Santella drops out. Now he's going to fight Hector Sandoval on the lead fight on Fox Sports 2. And one would imagine make a lot less money than he would have originally made fighting Demetrius Johnson on the co-main event. Anthony Hamilton fighting Damian Grabowski. That's at heavyweight. Ross Pearson, who I had to do a double take at. Dude fought like 2.5 weeks ago at UFC 200. Fighting, or I guess one of the prelim cards on Friday or Thursday. Pearson fighting Jorge Masvidal, moving up to welterweight, I guess, so he won't have to cut, and taking another tough fight. I mean, Brooks was a tough fight. This is going to be just as tough, versus a guy in Masvidal who is good everywhere. And then we got Ed Herman versus Nikita Krylov at 205. Both of those guys, not the most exciting, but, they're both skilled. Both seem to fly under the radar and get a lot of impressive wins against impressive opponents. Who you got in those 4 fights, P-Money?
Oh, man. For the Fox Sports 2 prelim card, I've got to take Hayes. I've got no clue who Hector Sandoval is, really, if I'm being honest. Anthony Hamilton versus Damian Grabowski.
Man, I think I'll have to take Hamilton in that one. Not super familiar with either of them. I know I've seen them fight, but not too many times. Like my boy Ross Pearson, someone I've seen fight a ton of times. As you mentioned, just fighting on July 8th, scheduled to fight on July 30th, 22 days later, barely 3 weeks. Just 22 days removed from his fight. Um, Man, Masvidal is a tough one. I also have to go with Masvidal in that one. I just think he's got the height, he's got the reach, he's got the skill. And Ed Herman versus Krylov, that's an interesting one. Krylov has been in the UFC for a minute now. Did have one fight as a UFC heavyweight where he was victorious. Um, and then has done fairly well for himself as a light heavyweight. Um, Man, he's got some pretty good striking too. I dare say I'm taking Krylov over the well-seasoned UFC vet Ed Herman.
And that brings us to the main card of UFC 201. The first fight's a really interesting one. Ian McCall making his return. He hasn't fought in a year and a half. Toyed around with the idea of retirement. He's only got 2 wins in his last 6, but he really only does lose to the best. 2 losses to Mighty Mouse, 1 to Benavidez, 1 to John Lineker. 2 impressive wins against Brad Pickett and Alarde Santos. Justin Scoggins, 2 losses of his own. 1, a controversial split decision loss to Dustin Ortiz. Another one where he got subbed out by John Moraga. Stylistically, man, this is gonna be very tough. I think Scoggins is a little bit more well-rounded. He has that karate base, but very good wrestling too. That's guaranteed, I think, to frustrate Ian McCall. Scoggins is the favorite in this one, minus 245 as far as it to go the distance. Minus 205 to go to the decision. So it looks like Vegas is favoring a Scoggins decision. And I will lean that way as well and take Scoggins.
Yeah, I think I've got to go that way myself. Ian McCall is a top talent in the flyweight division, but Justin Scoggins, I'm a fan of his style, his movement. He's got a great kicking arsenal, super diverse. He's got all the striking attacks. He's a young prospect too. He does, could very easily only have the 1 loss to John Moraga. That was a super close fight with Dustin Ortiz. A lot of people thought Scoggins should have had that one. And he brings a lot to the table there. I think he will just be a little more crafty than Uncle Creepy. Ian McCall, he does have good boxing. He's got good hands. He's got really solid fundamentals, but just the way their styles play out, you can't sleep on McCall. But I think Scoggins, he's young, he's hungry, and he's coming for this one. I think he's going to get the W here.
Yeah, and moving on to a welterweight fight. Francisco Rivera versus Erik Perez. Rivera, one of these guys who throws hard, and if he tags you, you're in trouble. His last 3 wins have come via KO or TKO in the first or second round. But, unfortunately, he only has 1 win in his last 5. Hasn't really had the best time of recent. Those 5 fights being losses to Mizugaki, Faber, Lineker, and Pickett, and a KO win against Alex Caceres. What he seems to do in fights is throw hard all 3 rounds, and toward the end of the fight, toward the end of the second round, third round, starts to get tired. He's fighting a guy in Perez who fights over at Alliance. He's going to have a good game plan put together. Perez, since joining the UFC back in 2012, only 2 losses to a split decision loss to Takeya Mizugaki and a submission loss to Brian Caraway 2 years ago, who has made a name for himself in the division. especially with that recent win against Sterling. So I'm taking Perez here, outlast. If it ends early, my pick would be Rivera, but I see Perez outlasting Francisco Rivera here and getting I'll call it another decision win.
Oh my goodness, Jake, this one. I feel this is a really tough one to call. I mean, just for me, I really like Erik Perez. He's definitely been one of the more exciting UFC bantamweights that there's been since he came into the division, and also really like him as a commentator for what is it? I think he's on Fox Deportes or whatever, the Spanish language broadcast with who is it? Victor Davila. He was doing some stuff with them, as well as Fabricio Verdum. I definitely enjoyed seeing him on there, but um, man, him and Francisco Rivera, they're very similar. Great hands, serviceable ground game, and both have good power too for the bantamweight division. I mean, we've seen Erik Perez finish people. We've certainly seen Francisco Rivera finish people. Man, I feel like this one is just a coin flip to me. You know what? You're taking Perez. I'll go with Francisco Rivera in this one.
And we got a tweet from our boy Brooks about 10 minutes ago at Brooks B saying LMAO calling for a known juicer in Belfort to head a fighters union when all this is getting bigger because Hunt and a juicer. Then he didn't send me a second part, but yeah, Aldo calling for maybe one of the basically calling for the Barry Bonds of MMA to head up a players union. That is a little bit of a head scratcher. I guess the next fight we're going to be moving to is Matt Brown versus Jake Ellenberger. And, man, for as much talent as both guys have, it's crazy at the lack of wins they've been able to get lately. Matt Brown, 1-4, or 1-3 in his last 4, even though those 3 losses were to the current champ, Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, and Damian Maia, who, I mean, Maia might be the second best. Lawler might be the best in the division, and Johnny at that time may have been the best. I mean, he's dropped off, I feel like, a lot in the last year, but those are 3 impressive losses to take if you're going to take 3 losses. Ellenberger, 1-5 in his last 6 losses to Rory, Robbie, Gastelum, Wonderboy, and Safadine. Win against Koscheck, which those are also killers. He lost to, I don't know, man. Just watching Jake in his last few fights, he really mashed the gas against Koscheck, but against Lawler, against KG, against Wonderboy, against Tarek, he sort of just seemed a little, didn't seem like the old Jake we knew, who would just stand in there, throw bombs. He seemed hesitant. And against Matt Brown, that's the very last thing you want to be. I think Brown goes through him like a buzzsaw and wins within 90 seconds. And he's rocking that new Chuck Liddell cut, which I'll change it to 60 seconds just because he's going to be extra furious with that haircut.
A wildly accurate prediction there, Jake. That's what I enjoy from you. And heck, I can see it happening. I mean, Jake Ellenberger,
1 minute 3 seconds.
63 seconds. Okay. I mean, I could certainly see it. Ellenberger has certainly not been on the better side of his career. And heck, I want to say he's been finished in about 63 seconds as of late. Matt Brown, he's developed his striking more and more. He's a guy that's completely turned his career around. I mean, gosh, he was I want to say he was like sub 500 at one point. Like, just had to get on this win streak just to get his overall MMA career record to 500 and get it to where it is today.
and he's just been looking better and better over the years, as opposed to being very mid tier when being brought on from the Ultimate Fighter. Um, and Ellenberger came in um, super hot from from Bellator and M1 and IFL and all those places, and was running through dudes looking like a powerhouse, and then as of late just one win in his last 6 fights, and that being to Josh Koscheck, who's now in Bellator. Um, uh, been finished in the first round twice by Stephen Thompson, Kelvin Gastelum, um, and I certainly would not doubt that this happens again when he fights Matt Brown here.
That brings us to the co-main, which for me, this co-main event against Thug Rose and Carolina Kowalkiewicz, watching both of them fight comes down to one thing. Can Carolina keep Rose in the clinch long enough to damage her? If Rose can get out of the clinch, keep it standing, keep range, keep landing. I mean, she punches harder than Kowalkiewicz does. But if Carolina can sort of impose her will, push Rose against the offense and work that clinch game, I think she'll win the fight. I think the fight will probably remain standing. I think if anyone wants it on the ground to grapple, it's probably Thug Rose. But I think Kowalkiewicz has shown pretty nasty takedown defense in previous fights. So I think it stays standing. And the question for me is when the Pole, I think she's Polish, when Kowalkiewicz, moves in to try and get sticky with Rose, sort of like Claudia was doing a lot in those first 2 rounds against Joanna. Can she clinch her up and score points like that, or will Thug Rose get away and land harder punches of her own? I think Rose will be able to do that. She's probably been smart enough to train that a lot this camp. So I'll give it a 29-28 unanimous Thug Rose.
Man, that's another bold prediction, Jake. I don't know why I'm shocked. You were known for those, sir. And Thug Rose, man, she's definitely been on a tear, beating Tisha Torres, avenging one of her earlier losses, beating the highly touted Paige Van Zandt, submitting Angela Hill. She's been looking great as of late, and she will enjoy a good height and reach advantage over Carolina Kowalkiewicz. I tell you what, though, after how the Holly Holm versus Shevchenko fight played out, I think I will take the shorter foreign girl to beat up the American girl, and I think Kowalkiewicz will be able to work her game here. I mean, she is 2-0 in the UFC. She made her debut against Randa Marcos, who is absolutely one of the toughest girls in the UFC strawweight division. Looked even better against Heather Jo Clark earlier in May. This girl is no joke. I think she's going to stay undefeated. The striking is sharp. Her overall game is sharp. And as good as Namajunas has looked as of late, I think Kowalkiewicz would do well to employ his style, kind of like Shevchenko had against Holm, make her swing, make her miss, and get in there and capitalize. And I would not doubt if that's what we see on Saturday night. And I think I'm going to pick Carolina to do just that.
That brings us to a main event. What a main event we got, Pat. Are you excited for this one? Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley?
Oh, No, this fight, no, this fight's probably gonna be no good. If we're being honest,
This man, it
nah,
was
it's
so
no
overshadowed
good,
by the
no
sale
good.
of the UFC 200, all of that. This is gonna be a great fight. I don't need to lay it out for you too much, other than both of these guys throw hard as shit, and they score knockouts a lot. Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley. Um, Man, for me, the to a mainstream fan who doesn't watch sports, I'm just gonna say what I basically just said. Both of these guys throw punches extremely hard, so buckle up and get fucking ready for a KO. For the MMA fan who's a little more nuanced, I'll say this. I'll say watch Robbie's left hand and just watch the way that Robbie rarely hits, or he will hit, but he rarely lands damaging strikes with his right hand. He uses his right to set up that left that just barrels you over. And Woodley, obviously, it's the counter right you're looking for. And Woodley, I mean, that's he's ended many a fight with it. And man, as much as my gut is saying, or as much as my brain is saying Robbie, and is saying Robbie wins a very close decision, 48-47. I'm picking Woodley to land that counter right first round. New champion. Wins it late in the first round, but I see Robbie throwing that left out and getting tagged with the counter right, and it being a one punch KO. Crumbles like bricks, walk off KO for your new champion, Tyron Woodley.
God damn. You know what? And I could see it happening too. Really, I think the speed is a factor in this fight. That you look at Tyron Woodley's fight with Carlos Condit. He battered Condit just from pillar to post in that fight. Landed a savage leg kick that just blew Condit shit out. Very unfortunate injury. Certainly didn't want it to see the fight end like that, but the way that fight was going, it certainly ended like it was looking to end very tragically for Carlos Condit, one way or the other, because he was just getting stomped into the ground in that fight. Now you look at Robbie Lawler's fight with Carlos Condit, and Robbie Lawler arguably should have lost the belt in that fight against Carlos Condit. Condit really did a great job and fought a great fight. I mean, of course, Robbie Lawler, as tough as he is, he's landed shots, and he certainly landed a lot against Condit. And Condit is one of the most resilient mixed martial artists, a guy who can take huge blows. I mean, he went the distance with Johnny Hendricks, took the best from Johnny Hendricks, who's a super heavy hitter. And Tyron Woodley ended his night, whereas when he fought Robbie Lawler, he probably should have gotten the judge's decision and been the champion that night. Um, Man, just based on that fight alone, I mean, not based on that fight alone, but really just looking at um, what Tyron was able to do, just the quickness, the explosivity. Robbie Lawler is a guy who his bread and butter is standing in the pocket, trading with you, being tougher than you, hitting hard as a brick, and getting the other guy to fold. I don't know if Tyron Woodley is going to do any of those things. I don't know if he's going to stand in the pocket and trade. He's probably going to try and be elusive and counter. Tyron Woodley also has explosive power. And Tyron Woodley, he's also not a guy that's going to fold whatsoever. He's a guy that you're going to have to finish and put away. We have seen him put away before against, of course, we all remember the Strike Force fight, his title fight with Nate the Great Marquardt, where he did suffer a TKO loss, but that was some time ago, and Tyron certainly seems to have come a long way. Um,
ultimately, both of these guys have crazy power, some of the best power in the welterweight division. But Robbie Lawler also just gets hit so often. I think that's just not a game he can afford to play with Tyron Woodley. But that's the only way Robbie Lawler plays it. And I think Tyron is going to come in there, and he is also going to serve up Robbie Lawler, and he will be the new UFC welterweight champion.
Damn, well, you heard it here first. A couple ballsy predictions, but if we were right, you better expect to tune in next week and hear us gloating about it for a good 20 minutes. If we were wrong, I guess tune in next week and expect neither of us to act like it ever happened. Thank you for tuning in. Pat, give it to him one more time. Where can we find you? All that good stuff. Oop, he hung up. He is on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. I'm on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. Enjoy the fights, and until next time, people, we gone.
Tune into the MMA Podcast every Tuesday night.
The wild style, always been a foul child. Will I, sucker? I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA Podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in a wheelchair, the Aunt Jimmy Show has been on a roll. I wanna say John Jones is the host, so I think